Hello, Cleveland. Welcome to another episode of the Dawgland podcast. I am your host, Anthony Joki. As always, got my co-host Jackson McCurry alongside me. Jack, man, it's damn cold outside, but you know what? We've been able to warm up, stay nice and warm. We had the Buckeyes win the national championship on Monday, and it's kind of made this cold weather almost non-existent because we've been celebrating the last couple days here.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, it has been really cold out. Like this morning, I walked outside and it froze me instantly. But yeah, like you said, Monday night has taken like the mind off of the weather for all of us because Ohio State brought home another national championship. Just like we knew it was going to happen. They decided to make it dramatic in the second half, but a nine-time national champion now are the Ohio State Buckeyes, and what an unbelievable game it was.
It was a great game. It looked like it was going to be a complete blowout, and I'll give a lot of credit to Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame. They made it tough on the Buckeyes in the second half. They're going to be a great team with him as a head coach, and who knows if anything happens to Ryan Day, I would imagine that's probably Buckeyes' number one target would be Marcus Freeman. But I'll tell you what, Notre Dame isn't like the Notre Dame of old. I think they're a different breed, and they're here to compete with everybody. So it was really great to see them. And it just seemed like a really clean game of high sportsmanship. Like that one play with Xavier Watts and Trayvon Henderson. You saw those two guys give credit to each other after they kind of knocked the ball away from each other on that wheel route. It just seemed like it was a great game overall, and both sides were really hungry for it. And just the way that it ended was pretty special.
Yeah, without question. I mean, it's two first class universities right there, two first class football organizations, so to speak, between Ohio State and Notre Dame. I think Ryan Day and Marcus Freeman lead very good programs, and you saw it on the field, like you mentioned. I thought that was awesome. Like to see like Henderson and Watts go toe to toe, both are top 75, top 50 prospects, however you want to rank them. But just going on a one-on-one battle like that and both giving respect to one another. I mean, Henderson's a great running back. Watts is a great safety. Just to show that professionalism, sportsmanship, respect right there. Like that's what it's all about. And Ohio State obviously rejoiced in the victory at the end. You see Ryan Day getting the Gatorade bath and everything, but there was that respect from both sides, like Ryan Day and Marcus Freeman shaking hands after the game, both teams shaking hands, congratulating one another because Notre Dame had a great season, like you said. But I thought it was a very clean game. Like, yes, there was turnovers and everything, and there was some penalties, but all in all, it was a fight to the very end. Even though like we all knew Ohio State was going to get the job done, but just a very first class national championship game, which is I think what we all wanted at the end of the day,
It was definitely competition at the highest level on Monday night,
without
and,
question.
and that's exciting to watch. I don't know if you saw, there was a clip after the game of Marcus Freeman kind of in the tunnel watching the trophy presentation, and I thought that was kind of cool because he's still Buckeye at heart. He was there for the last championship, and I think it's obviously very bittersweet, probably a lot more bitter than sweet, but to lose against your alma mater in a national championship game, but. I'm sure deep down, way down in there, he was kind of happy as well. It might not be like right in that instant, but playing there, I'm sure it's a little bit different. Speaking of those guys as top 75, 50 prospects, Henderson and Watts, Mel Kiper, who does a lot of mock drafts, and we'll see a lot of his player rankings from now until the draft in April, released his official mock draft this week, and it has Cam Ward going number one overall to the Tennessee Titans, wide receiver cornerback Travis Hunter going to the Browns at number two, Shador Sanders going to the Giants, Abdul Carter going to the New England Patriots, Mason Graham going to the Jacksonville Jaguars to round out the top five. So, Jack, in this mock from Mel Kiper, which we'll see 10 different versions of this mock typically between now and the draft in April. I think 10.0 is usually like his last one. Um, from now until then, this will change a handful of times. But right now he has the Browns taking Travis Hunter, number 2 overall.
Yeah, I was expecting quarterback. I'm not gonna lie. I thought Mel would go that route. I think he understands it. Cleveland's looking for that franchise quarterback still, but to him go Travis Hunter, I think that might be something. He might have heard some tidbits from league sources saying, Dion's not really open to Shador going to Cleveland. So, penciling him to Cleveland just doesn't make sense. But I mean, you look at the talent of Travis Hunter, if we want to we'll focus on that. I think it makes sense for the Browns. They need a wide receiver, they need a corner. Travis Hunter obviously was a great all-around player at Colorado, winning the Heisman Trophy for what he did both on offense and defense. I think it makes a ton of sense for the Cleveland Browns, and even Kiper mentioned uh, in the breakdown of it, which I'm sure you'll post here for our YouTube audience. But he said that the Browns would likely use him as a wide receiver and then sprinkle him in at cornerback in specific situations. That makes a ton of sense because the Browns needed. They could. I mean, I don't know if people want to classify Jerry Judy as the number one yet. He had a really great year, but maybe they think Travis Hunter is the number one and Jerry Judy's the 1B or vice versa. I think it makes a ton of sense. We'll see, because if Shador isn't able to come to Cleveland, because Dion has said that, like, he's not going to make him go to specific organizations. He also said the same about Travis Hunter. So if he's not going to let Shador come to Cleveland, why would he let Travis Hunter? But we still got 3 more months of this, but it's very interesting that Kuiper penciled him in here.
Yeah, you mentioned the breakdown that he wrote for it. He said, uh, "Know how I just said the Titans had the league's worst QBR and interception total? Well, the Browns were the worst in both categories. Deshaun Watson also retore his Achilles, and Jameis Winston is a free agent, so taking Sanders isn't out of the question. But I think Cleveland is more likely to address another hole here and find quarterback reinforcements in free agency and/or later in the draft." Trading back for more picks with another QB needy team could be part of this equation too. He wrote in parentheses. Plus, Hunter is just that good. I see elite quickness and ball skills on both sides of the ball. Traits that helped him to 15 touchdown catches and 4 interceptions this season. The Browns would likely use him primarily at receiver and then sprinkle him in at cornerback in specific situations. Now, Jack, that kind of goes against what the opposite we've heard. I think up until now we've heard that teams view him mainly as a cornerback and could see wide receiver specific packages, but he has the Browns using them mainly as a wide receiver. What are your thoughts on that?
It's not the first person I've heard say this. I think, you know, it's interesting to see what his plans are at the next level. There's some people that say he's going to play both ways. I don't think he can play to it the level he did in college, where he was playing 100 snaps every game. I think with the NFL being much more physical than college football, I just don't see that happening. I mean, we saw guys, remember Chris Gamble growing up on that 02 Ohio State championship team. He played both ways. And then he got to the NFL and he was just a corner for the Carolina Panthers and a damn good one at that, too. So, we haven't seen anybody play two-way to like a full length of a game. I don't think that's out of I think that's out of the possibility, but I could see him playing, you know, however, if he's primarily a corner, play, maybe 10 to 15 snaps as a wide receiver or vice versa. If he's a full-time wide receiver, maybe play 10 to 15 snaps as a corner. I know our friend and, get for friend of the show, Jacob Roach, I think he has Hunter listed as number one corner and the number one receiver when he's stacked the rankings. And I'm sure we'll have Jacob on at some point in the future to talk about how Hunter translates as an NFL wide receiver and an NFL corner. But uh, I could see it going either way. I think it just depends on the team, what they ultimately view him as, and where they have him on the board. Do they have him as a number one wide receiver or more primarily as a number one corner? Like, that's still to be determined throughout this draft process.
Yeah, I mean, if the Browns have them on the board as a number one wide receiver and number one corner, like, do you really pass that up? I don't know like how many snaps you could get out of him at both positions every game. I know if we're going back to the Kevin Stefanski offense, I could see him playing more as a corner than a wide receiver, especially if you're going to see a lot of two receiver, two tight ends, and a running back set. A lot of that 12 personnel there. We'll see. I would think he would primarily be a defender. And look, they certainly need cornerback help. Denzel Ward is Denzel Ward, but we saw, you know, Greg Newsom's in the last year of his deal and probably won't re-sign long term. He could be dealt this offseason. Um, why am I having a hard time here? Martin Emerson,
Martin
um,
Emerson, yeah.
took a step back this year, so they really could use a corner. To get one in the top 5 of the draft would be awesome. Like when they took Denzel, but you have to wonder where is his value if you're only going to use him a certain amount of time on offense, a certain amount of time on defense. If you only play him on offense, if you only play him on defense, it's going to be a hard balance. I think. There's probably certain situations in the NFL where, in certain teams, where he could probably get away with playing both. He could probably do that here in Cleveland because there is that need in both rooms. It's just a to be determined of if the Browns front office would view him that way as a two-way player.
Yeah, and I mean, like, the only guy that I know that ever did it, like, 2 ways was Dion. The '96 season with Dallas, he played all 16 games. He started as a corner and he had 2 interceptions that year and, 3 fumble recoveries, and then on offense, he had 67 targets, 36 catches, 475 yards, and a touchdown. So, he like, I don't know how many offensive snaps he played back in that year, but he showed that he did it both sides of the ball, and he was a first team All Pro. So, like, Dion did it, but he only did it primarily for that 1 year where he actually played a significant amount at wide receiver. But it's just a matter of like how teams view him. Like, New England probably would use him more as a wide receiver because they need the wide receiver more. Um, they do at corner because they have Christian Gonzalez, who's already shown flashes of being a number one corner. Um, Jacksonville would probably use him as a corner. I would imagine the Giants, if they drafted him, would use him as a corner. Tennessee might use them both ways too because they do have Calvin Ridley, but they don't really have anything else in the wide receiver room. So I can see him playing both ways, at least in Tennessee or Cleveland, whoever decides to take him.
I have a comparison for you. Could he be the Shohei Otani of football, where at first he comes in and is able to play both ways, offense and defense, just like Shohei, hit and pitched? Would you see him coming in as being able for his first like few years in the NFL, being an offensive player and a defensive player, and then at some point down the road, transitioning to okay, we found that he works best as a wide receiver, or we found he works best as a cornerback, and him stick to that.
I think ultimately they're going to I think a team is going to say, "What do you want to primarily be?" And I think they'll let Travis decide that ultimately, but I do think they're going to sprinkle him in some spurts because he's such a weapon. I think the physical toll the NFL takes on the body for these players, I don't see him being able to play 75 snaps a game and they somehow split it evenly between offense and defense. I think he will primarily be either a receiver or a corner, and then they'll sprinkle him in on the opposite side of whatever he ultimately decides to play.
If he is that comparison, the Shohei Otani of football, do you view him right now as the best player in the draft?
Oh, without question, because it fits two of like the five primary positions in football. It's hard to find elite level wide receiver talent, and it's hard to find elite level corner talent. And if you got a guy that can do both, like, he's without question the number one player in this draft. Like, because he has that versatility and he's great at both. Like, I know people said, well, he wasn't that great as a wide receiver and he wasn't that great as a corner. I mean, you have 15 touchdown catches, like the Alamo Bowl where he ran that slant route and took it the distance for a touchdown. He showed you that playmaking ability at the wide receiver position, and he was a really good corner. Like, him and Will Johnson, I think, are on par when it comes to the corners in this draft. But the way that he was electrifying with the ball in his hands as a wide receiver, like it's hard to find a guy that can do both. Like it's obviously so rare because we haven't really seen this in a long time in a football player. Uh, but like he is without question the top player and top prospect in this draft.
There was the Tennessee Titans today introduced their new general manager Mike Berganzi, and at that press conference, Titans president of football operations Chad Brinker put out a quote and said, "We won't pass on a generational talent with the first pick in the NFL draft." And we also wanted to play the segment of Adam Schefter joining WEEI in New England, asking them what he meant by that, and this is what Adam had to say.
So, Adam, last one here. Earlier today, this is sort of more looking forward into the draft. You tweeted out around 11:30 today. Titans president of football operations Chad Brinker
Yes.
at today's press conference to introduce
Yeah.
GM Mike Borgonzi. We won't pass on a generational talent with the first pick in the NFL draft. If you had to guess, not holding your feet to the fire per se, but if you had to guess, who do you think that generational talent might be, or do you have any intimations as to which way the Titans would be going?
The defensive lineman from Penn State or the wide receiver cornerback from Colorado. That quote told me that they are not locked in to take a quarterback at one. That is not what New England wanted to hear. That quote today.
No, it was not, sir.
Certainly not.
That's unfortunate, Adam. But we end on a low note, so a great
Thanks for
player
that.
is not going to drop to the Patriots at 4. Appreciate
All right, so we hear that, Jack, and there's been a big debate here in Cleveland about whether to take a quarterback at number 2 or take the best player available, and we kind of wanted to dive into that as well. So, if let's preface this, it's very on in the process. We have another 3 months until the NFL draft. This is going to flip flop 100 times between now and then about taking quarterback, taking best player available, etc. We still haven't had free agency, which is going to play a huge factor into what the Browns do in the draft in April. But when you hear that quote from Adam Schefter talking about where the Titans could be at this moment, if they go Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter number 1, that leaves Cam Ward, Shador Sanders for the Browns to have their pick at number 2. Where do you stand at this point, 3 months out from the draft, in terms of taking the best player available or taking the quarterback at number 2?
Yeah, I mean, you've said it best. It's really on early on in the process, and I think that quote today also signified that smoke screen season has begun because, like,
Yeah.
obviously the new GM is coming on board. We don't know what he wants. We don't really know what Brian Callahan wants. We know that they have Will Levis, and he obviously is not the franchise guy. Neither is Mason Rudolph. So the Titans obviously need a quarterback. They have cap space. They could be in the sweepstakes for Sam Darnold or trying to get one of these other veteran quarterbacks that the Browns are going to be in the mix for. The Kirk Cousins, the potential uh, possibilities of Geno Smith or Derek Carr to be available. So, like, they're in the same spot that we're in. And, and we see already the early evaluations on these quarterbacks. Like, when I had Jacob Roach on, we were reading scouting reports about Shador and Cam Ward, and both of them are looking at a late 1, early 2 type grade right now, according to some of the draft experts. So it's when Schefter says, well, when you hear generational talent, you're talking about Travis Hunter, you're talking about Abdul Carter. Like, he's not wrong. Like, I don't know if Abdul Carter's so much a generational talent, but the first thing I thought of was Travis Hunter. It's because of his two-way versatility, the way he's projects to be a pretty good wide receiver or a pretty good corner. Like, you don't pass up on that kind of guy. But I also like the same situation comes here in Cleveland. Like, do you pass on a blue chip talent like a Carter, like a Travis Hunter? Do you move back and then set up to get a potential like Will Johnson or Mason Graham or even a McMillan or one of the offensive tackles? Like, it's a fair debate. Like, it's no, like, I get it from both sides. And I've been telling my buddies this who are all on the QB at 2 train. Like, I totally get it. Like, I kind of feel that way too. Like, when the Browns are in a position to get a franchise quarterback, if they feel like Cam Ward and Shador Sanders are both franchise type quarterbacks, then they have to take one at two. But if they like one and don't like the other, and this goes back to 2016, Anthony, when there was the Jared Goff Carson Wentz debate where people were like, you just take one regardless, no matter who it is. The Browns wanted Jared Goff, but then the Rams jumped us to take him, and the Browns traded out because they didn't value Carson Wentz as a franchise quarterback. And that first year and a half, 2 years, the Browns looked really stupid, and look what Carson Wentz ultimately became. He's a backup quarterback now in this league. And of course, injuries played into that. But like, it's a fascinating debate. And like you said, we have 3 months to go. We don't really know much information at this point. We know kind of that the Browns like Cam Ward, and there's a lot of questions still to be answered about Shador Sanders. But we're so early in the process. Like, the All-Star games haven't happened yet. The combine's still over a month away. And you mentioned free agency. Like, if the Browns can get Cousins or Geno Smith, like, that might change their draft plans. They might think that one of those guys could be the answer for 2025 and 2026. We might dip our toe in the draft then. But the Browns have to nail this draft. Like, Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski have to nail this draft. We've said it multiple times. Like, this is the make or break year for them. They have to nail it, get this team back on the right track, or come a year from now, like, they're going to be out of jobs probably, and we're going to be looking at a new GM and head coaching combo.
Yeah, because right now we haven't had a first round pick in 3 years, so this is the first one that they've had, and they have to hit it. Um, and you talk about those grades on those quarterbacks. 2022, the first quarterback taken was number 20 overall, and that was Kenny Pickett. I don't see these guys being Kenny Pickett. I see them being better than that. But it could be very interesting to see what happens if, all right, Titans go Travis Hunter number one. If the Browns get a quarterback in free agency, all right, do they go Abdul Carter number two? Do they go somewhere else? There's a long time between now and then, and we'll certainly, be discussing it here because it gives us a lot of fodder to talk about and whatnot. But as of right now, if anybody, but Cam Ward goes number one, I'm taking Cam Ward number two. I think that he's the best quarterback in this draft. You might as well swing your shot with him. I we'll see if he can fit into what Stefanski wants to do offensively. Um, but if he's not there, I'm taking Carter unless he goes number one, and try your hand at free agency, getting quarterback free agency, maybe taking a quarterback with that first pick in the second round or in the third or fourth round, depending on who's there. Maybe trade back into the first round and grab somebody. If you really like somebody, get them on that fifth year option. Maybe you take a guy like a Will Howard or Kyle McCord or Curtis Rourke from Indiana, in the third, fourth round. Maybe that's the route you go, as well as getting a better quarterback, somebody that you can groom, to be the starter next year or the year after that. So you could have like a easy transition from one quarterback to another. But if Cam Ward's there, I'm taking him. If not, I'm taking Carter, and hopefully we're getting a quarterback in free agency. Once we get to free agency and see how those dominoes fall, it'll really paint a picture, I think, what the Browns are going to do in the draft.
Yeah, I think it could get a little clearer, but I was like, now last year's example with the Atlanta Falcons, like, they went out, they signed Kirk Cousins to a massive contract, 4 years, 180 million. Everybody goes, hey, the Falcons have their quarterback, they have the weapons, they're going to take off. And then on draft night, they take Michael Penix with the 8th pick. So it's like, free agency could tell the story of how the draft's going to unfold, but then it might not. Like, and I've said the Titans right now have 44 million in cap space. I think, I don't know if that including rollover, if they had any rollover. So could they be in the sweepstakes for a Sam Darnold if Minnesota doesn't tag him? And even if they do tag him, do they like potentially make a trade there? That's going to be interesting. Like, the Patriots don't need a quarterback. The Raiders need a quarterback, and they have a lot of cap space. Do they go out and sign Sam Darnold? Like, or do they trade for Geno Smith or somebody who the Seahawks could move off of? Like it's a pretty like it's going to be interesting. And the other monkey wrench that could be thrown into this is Jalen Milroe because, like there's already some buzz about him, obviously, to the Browns because of the Tommy Reese connection. He's going to be in the Senior Bowl next week in Mobile. And then, I heard somebody say that Milroe might run a 4.3 at the combine. Like if he balls out of the Senior Bowl in the practices, and then he has a monster combine. Like I think he goes top 15 then. I think somebody's going to bet on the upside the way the Colts try to bet on the upside of Anthony Richardson with all his physical tools. So like the discussion is Ward and Sanders right now, but Milroe's the wild card because if he goes down to Mobile, Anthony, and he has a great week and he listens to the NFL coaching that is there for him, and then he tears up the combine with his physical tools and everything, like then he gets thrown into the discussion, and he's already been thrown into the discussion by some of the sports talk radio in Cleveland. So like there's another thing that we're waiting to see. And like the East West Shrine game starts, the practices start this weekend, so we get our first look at Shador with NFL coaching, and then next week with the Senior Bowl with all the other quarterbacks, Howard, Milroe, Gabriel. Like it's going to be the next week's going to be fun because then like draft season really kicks into high gear because then we start seeing these prospects with NFL coaching, and you get to decipher some of these prospects and see how they adapt to the NFL coaching, and we'll see who emerges good, we'll see who emerges bad.
Yeah. We know a quarterback or two is probably going to shoot up based on the Senior Bowl, the Combine. And it always happens every single year. There'll be rumors of said quarterback going, number one, number two overall. It's just how this process works every single year. So looking forward to that. But we'll certainly be here to discuss all that. Is there anything else you want to get off your chest before we get out of here?
No, man. It was good to sit down and do a podcast with you. Getting ready, like draft season's really starting to heat up now. Yeah, we're working on a guest for next week, obviously, because East West Shrine game, Senior Bowl, like all happening next week. So, like draft season really kicks into high gear. So definitely looking forward to the discussions ahead.
Do we have the official Senior Bowl rosters out yet? Do we have?
We have accepted invites, but I don't think the teams have been announced yet. If they are, we might have to do an extra video for YouTube.
I was gonna say, do we know everybody that's gonna be there? Like, is quarterback wise, we heard Sanders. Do we know if like
Sanders is at the East West Shrine game?
Okay. Do we
He's
know
not
if,
at the Senior Bowl.
Howard, Milroe, who all is going to be there quarterback wise?
So real quick, the quarterbacks that are going to be at the Senior Bowl, because Shador Sanders is at the East West Shrine game, which practices start Saturday down in Frisco, Texas, at the Cowboys facility, which is kind of funny because of the rumors from last week. But the Senior Bowl quarterbacks are Jackson Dart, Dylan Gabriel, Will Howard, Riley Leonard, Jalen Milroe, and Tyler Show from Louisville. I'm sorry, I don't know why I just said that. But yeah, those are the 6 quarterbacks. There's plenty of intriguing prospects, but obviously all Browns fans' eyes are going to be on those quarterbacks for sure.
That's a pretty good group of quarterbacks. I haven't heard of the guy from Louisville, but all other 5 of those, I'm certainly intrigued to see how they perform at the Senior Bowl. So it should be a lot of fun, and we'll be covering.
I'm really disappointed. Yeah, I'm really disappointed Cam Ward's not in either of the All-Star games, and I can't find out why. I'm going to keep digging on that, but really disappointed to see that he's not participating in either one, because I feel like that would have really helped his NFL stock, because there is some negatives to his game, but obviously the physical tools are definitely there for him to be a potential franchise quarterback.
Makes you wonder if he's going to throw at the combine or not if he's not doing these All-Star games.
I sure hope so.
If not, it'll just be his pro day then.
Yep.
And well, we can talk about that once that gets on closer. But all right,
absolutely.
We really appreciate everybody that's been tuning in on YouTube. Like we've had a lot of success there. Please keep subscribing. We've more than quadrupled our followers on there and subscribers. So we really appreciate it very much. The views have been crazy. If we would have known that, we probably would have done this years ago, and we'd be a lot better off. And this could be our full-time job. But hindsight is 2020. which is maybe when we should have started this in 2020, like you brought up the other day. But thank you for watching us on YouTube. Be sure to follow Jack on X at Jack McCurry08, at Anthony Joki, JOKI. Be sure to follow the Dawgland on YouTube, X, Facebook, all the platforms. We're on there. We might even dabble into TikTok now. That is going to stick around, as far as we know. So, be sure to give us a follow there. And always remember, until next time, go Browns.